It's wonderful to have you here.
Good day to you.
Well, good day to you too. Uh, Absolutely wonderful to have you here. And thank you so much for being involved with the conference. We've had, we're having a. It's been wonderful. We've got a lot of people involved. We've got a lot of people watching. We had a bit of excitement at 3 a.m. Our stream went down. It was always the weak point. You have a single pipe into the internet, and we quickly re-established advantage, obviously, modern world, new button, new thing. But it did mean we got to see how many individuals had, that was roughly the halfway point, about 3 a.m., how many individuals had come and joined the conference. It was 4,400 at that point. So we are really excited about that. We are really excited about that. So it's wonderful. Right, I'm going to do a little intro on you. So you're an entrepreneur and an employer yourself. Your first company was Illegal IT from 1989 till 1998, which you sold. And I think when we talked, you said you sold a reason, had a comfortable existence, but felt that need to help people. That you'd always coached your employees, you'd always supported them. And that you saw an opportunity to do that on a wider basis. And so in 98, you started your second company, Quisto Coaching Bureau. You need to think about that, 1998, like where coaching was at that point. Like a very different world, right? Like right now, much more accepted. A lot of the tech companies have done a lot to change attitudes, but like really pioneering work. And coaching employees with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, giftedness, focus on talents, and you're also Vice President of ADHD-Europe and Chair of the Science Committee of the Dutch Association for People with ADHD, Dyslexia and Dyscalculia. So you also bring that wider European experience, which is something we were very keen on. I mean, we're looking to do this as a global event, which we've successfully done. You've got a fabulous presentation for us. Shall I flip over to the slides and
Yeah, great.
bring people
Great.
in? And then just say next slide, and I'll push on. And for anyone for our UK listeners, that is extremely reminiscent of COVID times. We used to come in, watch the news, and we'd have the chief medical officer give us horror upon horror of slide, and each time we'd just be like, next slide. We'd be like, oh my God, what's coming next?
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead. Just go ahead.
Over to you.
Yeah. So thank you for having me here. It's a wonderful opportunity to share my experience in coaching employees for employers. This is next sheet, please. Next slide.
Doing a terrible job already. There you go.
Yeah. So you already told this. I'm here today as a coach. My company name is Quisto, experts in people at work. And as you told them, I'm also Vice President of ADHD-Europe, etc. Next slide, please. Yeah, in addition to what you are told, I would like to share how did I become a coach. And like you just said, it emerges in 1998 from two lines in my life. One is that I've been working in different organizations. I started in a cleaning company when I was 15 or some, till 21, next to school, etc. And I was kind of secretary of the entrepreneur. So I already sensed some entrepreneurship there. And then I went to work in the Rotterdam Court of Justice. So a totally different culture. And I studied law next to my job in court. And I was a court clerk, so secretary of the judge. And then the first computers were brought in 1988 or some. And I will tell you about that later. And then after court, I worked in university as a teacher in legal informatics, legal IT. And from there, I started my own company, Legal IT Expert Systems. Never mind what that is. It's programming software. And the other line is that in the 80s, I got, we would call it now, an anxiety disorder. And I didn't know back then that I have ADHD and dyslexia. I just felt, well, I have to go to a mental hospital or something or whatever. And I went to my GP, and he referred me to Gestalt therapy. Maybe some of you know that. And it helped after, well, more or less 1 year. Back in court was the time I worked in court. Back in the court sessions, etc. Go through all my fears and anxiety. And well, I became up and running again. But this opened for me the world of psychology. So I did more therapy, and then it became trainings, then it became courses. And in the end, I did a 3-year education to become a therapist trainer. So in 1998, when we had sold this legal IT company to a big editor, this experience was still well present, and I thought, well, let's the word coaching, like you said, the word coaching came up in 1998, and I thought that's gonna be it. I kind of have a good intuition of innovation, things that will succeed or won't, and I thought coaching, this is the answer for employees in working situations. In the beginning, I had to explain to everybody what coaching is, but after a few years, everybody became aware, oh, the manager has a coach, and the secretary has a coach, etc. So people got to know it. Anyway, so that's how I started in 98. And then I took in another colleague, a trainer, and another coach, another coach. So this became my second company. And it grew, and we had an account manager and an office manager, etc. Then in the 2011-12, the financial worldwide crisis, it shrank again. And then we had to fire almost everybody. It was a terrible time, of course, but everybody has a new job in the meanwhile. So, and then it grew again, but now we work in a network setting. It's more modern, nobody on the payroll, but as a network of coaches and psychiatrists, etc. Next slide, please. Yes, this is, here it starts about coaching. In 1979, I worked in court, as you see, as a secretary to the judge. And my manager back then, nobody knew about ADHD, dyslexia, whatever. They weren't even into psychology, but my manager said, Hans, leave your secretary work there, and these computers that came in are a pilot of the Ministry of Justice, and it has to be a success within 1 year. Hey, now we know for ADHD, that's a magic formula. It's 1 year, a fixed period with a clear aim, and let's say he backed me up. He helped me and he supported me. So these computers became a success, and it was the start of my career in legal IT. So I explicitly thanked him for that later on. Next slide, please. So this is the network I'm talking about, and we have some other colleagues also. We work for employers, and most of the time, company doctors and HR advisors refer to us. Next slide, please. Yeah, let's go into first, before I talk about coaching employees, let's take away some prejudice about employers, because employers are not the bad guys most of the time. Of course, there are some, I know, but in the Netherlands and also in other countries, employers pay you and they want production. And if you flourish, if you are happy, the employer is happy. So please try to not see the employer as the bad guy. Next slide, please. This is how an HR manager or the manager, him or herself, looks at an employee. This is kind of in the back of their mind. They look at, of course, your performance, quality and quantity, but next to that, how you communicate with clients and with colleagues, how you work together with colleagues, the risk that you get ill, of course, your well-being, because if you feel well, everybody feels well, and especially your employer. So are your talents in place? Do we make the maximum profit of you? And of course, environmental circumstances. Next slide, please. This is what I show employers to make them realize that they have a certain percentage of special brains, neurodiversity, whatever you want to call it. And it always works. So when I show it to them, I fill in the name of their company, look at the internet, if they have 1,000 or 30,000 employees, and then they see this calculation. And for an employer, most of the time, this is an eye-opener. Oh, whoa, this is serious business. Yes, it is. So, and putting it in the statistics of other things like depression, sleeping disorder, etc., they see that these are concerns of HR. You have to pay attention to that. You have to invest in that. Next slide, please. So for employers and of course for everybody, it's kind of easy if you realize that about 10%, if you count dyslexia, ADHD, autism, and giftedness, 10% of every office, more or less, has a special brain, is neurodivergent. Next slide, please. This is what employers want and what they do not want. This is what I try to explain to my clients also. Don't go too much in fight for your right and demand adjustments, etc. Of course, useful adjustments are very good, but please realize what an employer wants: quality, innovation, creativity. Hey, when I'm talking about innovation, creativity, inventivity, does it ring a bell? ADHD maybe? So there is where you can get a connection with your employer. Next slide, please. So now about coaching. First of all, coaching in general. The coach, in my opinion, by the way, this is the Equisto way. There are other ways to look at coaching, of course, and I'm only talking about the Equisto way. Coaching, the coach is a kind of an extended brain, think along. And for the time, the period of coaching, the coaching trajectory, the brain of the coach is connected with the person, and the person can use my brain. Okay, next slide, please. If you want to know the opinion of ADHD-Europe about ADHD coaching, you can look in the internet, and if in Google you just type in ADHD-Europe coaching guide, you will find it, practical coaching guide version 2020. And there will be a new version in 22, but you will find it, ADHD-Europe coaching guide. And it's very helpful especially for people who discovered they have ADHD and they are looking for a coach. And it has a list of questions you can ask a coach to just check, is he or she a fit with me? It's a practical way of supporting you how to find a coach. Next slide, please. And this is, we go through it step by step. Employer, employee, everything fine, everybody healthy. Next, please. Then something happens. Employee gets ill, or the relation employer-employer is under pressure. Next, please. Then the coach is called in via what I said, the company doctor or HR. Next. And we do an intake session with employer. That will be the manager, maybe with HR and the employee. Next. And we start working on the relation and health, etc. Next. And then if things are repaired, the employee and employer can independently go on, then the coach leaves. Next. Okay, fine. That's in general. I told this because it's a triangle coaching. That's why I started with explaining about the employer, because people tend to, of course, empathize with the employee. But if you don't include the employer in your mindset, in your attitude, that is a risk factor. And okay, Next slide, please. In Equisto, this is about the average way we coach. It's always a limited time because there's a contract with a quote, and the average is, I think, 9 months, maximum 12 months. Of course, exceptions are possible. And the budget is around €4,500. We do 15 to 20 sessions of 1.5 hours. And what is important that when I start as a coach with the employer and the employee, like I said, in the triangle situation, I ask the employer, okay, you pay some money for this. What are your aims with this trajectory? And then at the employee, I ask, what are your working issues, the issues you want to work on? Because that's important. If an employee thinks, well, I've got nothing to work on, then there's no coaching. It might be mediation because the employer has a problem there, but it's important that the employee formulates more or less openly the issues he or she wants to work on. What also is a characteristic of our way of coaching is that the coach is kind of softly leading the whole trajectory. So if something is needed from someone else, the coach takes initiative. And because this is the employer pays me or my colleague, this employee, it doesn't work, are problems, issues with communications, whatever, like I told you in the scheme. And we are responsible for the whole person to get back in place. Next slide, please. We do integral and multidisciplinary coaching. I will try to explain what integral is. This is one of the aspects of integral coaching. It's not very well readable, but anyways. At conception, you get your genes. Your genes are in an environment, first in the womb, then as a baby, etc. And all this creates your personality, including school, etc. With this personality, you are in a certain culture, like I told you, in the cleaning company or in the court of justice. That's quite different, you know. So your personality in interaction with your environment, that makes out your functioning. And from your functioning, you have your productivity, and from there, your career in the direction of the future and becoming, getting in place, and etc. So this is one of the aspects. The total person is taken into consideration in the coaching as we do it. Next, please. So integral, for us, the Equisto way means all aspects of private and working life, as far as it's economic and necessary. Of course, we're not going through a whole list of things, and we're not working with protocols, but everything can come on the table, can be discussed and worked on in the coaching. It's not only ADHD, it's giftedness, autism, trauma, communication, private relationships, the family, whatever is necessary for this person in this situation to become healthy again, to go back to work, to find another place to work, to an outplacement or whatever is needed. So the whole integral is also that we do the whole process. We start with analyzing the situation, detection, and then we organize, if necessary, diagnosis. That's why in my network is a psychiatrist who does diagnosis, can prescribe medication, do together with me or my colleague therapy or other treatment. We also do the psychoeducation. We work on acceptance and very important, taking responsibility for the way you are, your ADHD or whatever your characteristics are. It's multidisciplinary. I think you have grabbed that idea already, because we are a team of coaches. We help each other. If I come to my boundaries, my limitations, I ask my colleague to come in and sit in the session, coaching session. the psychiatrist, or we have psychologists, or we do tests, or whatever is necessary. It's all in the network. Next, please. So before I proceed, I'm explaining this is the way Equisto does it. It's developed since 1998. And of course, I'm very much in favor of this way of working. That's why I do it. But it's not the only way, of course. That's why I showed you the ADHD-Europe ADHD coaching link. And there are always other ways to do it. We are not perfect. It's just our way. So let that be clear. I'm just telling you my experience and how we think we became successful. So the coach also does detection, because many times a client, an employee in our case, comes in and there are problems in interaction, and the manager is a bit irritated, etc., etc. And ADHD is not always already diagnosed. So we also do detection, and we do that listening in. If someone says, well, I always felt different, and of course we're going to look at giftedness or ADHD, etc. If the person talks about sensitivity for light and sounds, if the manager complains, he is always postponing things, and etc. So procrastination, as you know, is really an ADHD thing. Next, please. Other detection criteria is, that's why we always involve the manager. If the manager is quoting colleagues and tells us, well, she's a perfectionist, or sometimes they call me one-on-one, the manager, and they say, well, if he just wanted, he could. I think everybody with ADHD recognizes this kind of gossip behind your back. If he just wanted, and then I can translate this complaint into, hey, this might be ADHD or something else. So all these things, and planning, of course, logistics, or the employee asking for, well, do you have a course in time management? I said, well, let's talk first. Time management is okay, but maybe other things have a better priority. Next, please. Well, more into coaching. Then if we have a diagnosis, as I told you, we organize that, or the person already has a diagnosis for ADHD, then there are certain, we have the general coaching tools, and we have the specific ADHD coaching tools. I think the thing that takes, well, a lot of time is again and again explaining to the person, this is your ADHD behavior. And even when we do triangle conversations with the manager, the team lead present, and the employee has decided to be open about his or her ADHD, I also explain the brain. That's what I call it, explain the brain, and point out this is ADHD behavior and why it is ADHD behavior. And this is something else, because a person is not only his or her ADHD. You have a lot of characteristics. What is very important in ADHD, to explain self-control and make it specific in certain situations, and not as critique, but as feedback for the employee to get to know him or herself. And as is well known within ADHD, of course, emotional regulation is a huge challenge. And of course, with medication, that helps. But still, the coach explains to make the person aware where these emotional regulations going over the top in your happiness or grief or madness or whatever. So what is happening here in all this explaining the brain is creating a kind of helicopter view in the person, and that helps to raise internal awareness of what the person is doing and why. Next, please. Then now we have two long lists of all kinds of ADHD characteristics. And of course, these two lists are not applicable for everybody. But I never bring it up as a list, but it's in the back of my mind, of course, after so many years. And these are the detection criteria, but also when diagnosis is there, it's something to talk about, to realize, for instance, that with ADHD, most of them are functioning better in crisis situations. So they become a crisis mechanic, crisis manager, an ambulance nurse, or whatever. And that's great, of course. But if in the end, you're about 35, 40 years old, 45, and energy changes, then always being in a crisis, which is a solution for your ADHD brain, is draining your energy. And that's when we meet them, for instance, when they get burnout and they have a problem at work. So to realize that your brain is kind of looking for crisis situations, selecting crisis situations is a solution for your ADHD. Then if, for instance, you use medication a bit, then you don't need too much of a crisis to really become awake. Okay, but also point out the quality side during the coaching, like you're good in risky business, you're very rapid solution finding, conceptual thinking, and on the other hand, also to explain or to work on during the coaching is the swerve off topic, or have a hard time with making choices in your work or in your life. Hoarders, of course, cleaning your house is many times it's a problem. Here again, we work multidisciplinary. We also have in our network a coach who helps people at home to get things organized and clean the house. Sometimes this really is a problem and people are really ashamed for it. So it's important to have in our network such a person who knows the background a little and helps to structurize life at home. Okay, in detection, and also explain later, I think for ADHD, a very neurological symptom is the bumpiness and the making careless mistakes. So bump into things when you walk around, have blue spots on your legs and arms, etc., is one of the most important diagnostic criteria for ADHD, I think. And of course, alcohol is important to bring up. And for me, that's easy because in the 5th or 6th coaching session, I just tell something about myself. And some 10 years ago, I stopped drinking alcohol, and that was for a reason. And then I checked a little about that was really more than a bottle of wine per day, every day, and that my doctor said such and so. And then they feel open to, okay, Hans, now that you bring it up, yeah, I do have a problem with alcohol, and I blow a lot and whatever. So that's, of course, yeah, that's the advantage of being experienced myself. I can always tell a little story about my own history, and then people feel more at ease to share their problems that are hidden behind the mask of being such a fantastic employee. Okay, next slide, please. One of the things that is also important is in diagnostic criteria as well, but also to talk about during coaching, is interrupt people when they talk. In diagnostics, this question is asked, but be careful, because someone who interrupts others when they are talking is not always ADHD. It can also be giftedness, because gifted people also interrupt. So when you ask, do you interrupt people? It's important to ask us, if they say yes, ask the second question, why do you interrupt? Gifted people most of the time answer, I already know what they're going to say, and I have an opinion about it. And people with ADHD say spontaneously, otherwise I'd forget what I'm about to say. So the forgetfulness, the memory problem in ADHD makes them interrupt. So for diagnostics, that's important. And then when coaching starts, to bring it up, and for instance, as a measurement, if ADHD medication is working or in another way. And then, of course, all kinds of other ADHD traits will be discussed. Procrastination, I already mentioned, and the forgetfulness is really something more than once has to be talked about. How are you going to solve this? Because now we are talking coaching, so diagnosis is there, and then we start coaching the ADHD trait, and then forgetfulness is in kind of all aspects of life, private life, working life, etc., and that needs attention. And if we proceed to the next slide, we can now go into tools for coaching. This is my favorite. This is me in my former office and doing a power nap. And there are other ways, but mini breaks are very important for ADHD. It helps your brain to recover, to bring back energy. And I prefer the power nap, but mindfulness is okay. Take a walk. The power nap, please, if you want to do a power nap, first look on the internet and remember, power nap never longer than 25 minutes. That's very important, because if you really get to sleep longer than 25 minutes, you will have a hangover and really disturbing your brain and your biorhythm, etc. So if you're not used to it, I'm trained in power nap. I do it for whatever, 40 years now. So I can do it everywhere. And after 25 minutes, I wake up and come back and go ahead with my work. But for people who are not trained, you need to set a timer. That's important. So power nap is a very powerful means to calm your brain better, to energize your brain. And we know that after a power nap, people with ADHD are more tranquil, more calm, and more focused. So it helps. Power nap is good for everybody, but especially for ADHD. Next, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Oh, this is, I found this is very expensive, but some companies do have a power nap cabin where you can sleep a little. It's funny. I wouldn't ask an employer to buy these expensive things, but it's funny. Okay, next, please. So other ADHD coaching tools. To protocolize. So that is training the brain to structurize. If we have time later on, I can tell you how we do it, but I want to proceed now, but this is very important. The brain of ADHD doesn't create a step-by-step plan for every action, every small thing you have to do, or a total project, etc. There in the brain, there's no pop-up how to step-by-step do something. Okay, hopefully we have some time left to explain that later. Then habits are good, and a chain of habits is extra good. So let me say, I've also coached adolescents, and sometimes brushing your teeth is a problem, but sometimes they forget to take their medication in the morning. So this is a nice example. I start asking, okay, when you get up in the morning, do you brush your teeth? Yes, I brush my teeth every morning, no problem. Okay, that's great. Then take a rope and connect it with your toothbrush or your toothpaste, and connect the pills, the medication, with the toothbrush. Leave it there for a few days, and this will remind you to take your medication. After a while, you can remove the rope, and the rope is now in your brain. So this is the chain of habits. So use a habit that's already there and connect an important basic habit to it. Like, so if you know, if they know I use breakfast every morning, you can connect something to the breakfast. So these chains are the anchors during the day. I always explain that the anchors during the day give you the freedom to be creative and be yourself, as long as the anchors are secured. Then, of course, we work on TTD, means things to do. So have one list of things to do and maintain it every day. Have one diary, agenda. Really, I meet people who have 3 agendas. That's no good. It has to be in one place, one thing to do, one email, and one diary. Ohio is also a very, very nice one, because Ohio, I met it in 2002. I was in Chicago, and there were workshops, and in a workshop, someone explained this: only handle it once. So when you pick up an email, when you open an email, deal with it, archive it, delete it, do what's asked for, and then if you don't want to open it, if you don't want to deal with this, don't open it. So Ohio is very important. Compartmentalization of the week. So every morning I start with this, every Tuesday I do that. That is helpful for some people with ADHD, not for all, but some. Next, please. Yeah. As I told you, in the triangle, that's why I showed the triangle, we also include the manager, because if you overcome your prejudice against managers and employers, you will notice that they are open for it. I meet a lot of managers or HR advisors that say, "Oh, we are perfectly open for ADHD, but please, Hans, explain us, help us. What can we do for John or Mary, and how can we support him or her? How do we have to deal with it? Are there any adjustments necessary?" And what I meet, and I've been in a lot of organizations in the Netherlands and also abroad, it's just that if they don't know, then they will, of course, be irritated, and yeah, it won't work. So in the coaching, you also have to advise the manager in what they can do. And apart from adjustments, this is what a kind of thing I try to explain. Hey, you pay him or her 2, 3, 4, 5,000 euros per month, profit from it. So make him stand by for a crisis event, because ADHD is good in crisis events. Or like I told you, when I was in court, and my manager, who didn't know anything about ADHD, he gave me a challenge with a deadline, including support. It's wonderful for people with ADHD. They really hyper focus and go for it. And you only have to support them, and every now and then, well, tell them to take it easy or something, but they will go for it. And also to create, to help in things like innovation or in missions impossible. Next slide, please. Yeah, it's back to employers, because employers nowadays ask me and my colleagues, how can we become neurodiverse aware? And we made a list of a few steps that an employer can take to make more profit from people with ADHD, from their employees. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So these are the 10 steps to become a neurodiversity aware employer. The first thing is I'm very open and challenging with that. Hey, employer, realize you're paying this person, so you have to profit from him or her. Not profit in a negative way, but make the best out of it. Because sometimes employers and people, they are also, they're human and they want to empathize. It said, no, take your position. Our aim is we pay you and we hope that you do a lot of good work for us. That's the aim. That is realistic, practical. Next thing, the 10% that I showed you, 5%, more or less 5% is ADHD. So they are in your company if you want it or not. Very important, mind your language. That's not only for employers, that's for all of us. Please be aware that ADHD is not a genetic anomaly or a disorder or something is broken in the brain or you're sick. No, it's just a property of the brain. It's a characteristic of the brain. It's a set of property, maybe. It's not only the noradrenaline or not only the dopamine. It's a lot of things, but a set of properties of the brain, and which have advantages and disadvantages. Also important for an employer is if they see certain problems, that it might be dyslexia, ADHD, autism, giftedness, etc. So the problem is not that John or Mary doesn't want to deliver. A problem in communication, in procrastination, in malfunctioning. There's always something behind it. So, and if you are aware of neurodiversity, of your 10% of your employee population, you realize, hey, this might be something with the brain. Let's get in an expert. And then, of course, an employer, you can't make all employers psychiatrists and HR advisors. Of course, that's impossible for, but if they understand the core of ADHD, that will help. So I think, that's my personal opinion from many years of experience, the core for an employer to realize about ADHD is not a disorder, not a concentration problem or whatever. It's a lower standard default level of noradrenaline, which makes them less alert, which makes the brain less alert of what the person is doing. And from this less alertness, the person isn't aware what he or she is doing. The best picture you can see is children, when they are talking, their hands are moving around and they bump into things, they throw over their glass of milk. If you grab that picture, they are not aware where their brains and their arms and legs are, so they bump into things. And that's also in adult life. They are not aware that they are talking for more than 10 minutes, or that they just push the enter and send an email without checking the language or whatever. They are not aware of it, and you can help raising awareness, of course, with medication, but also with coaching. So what I teach employers, HR advisors, company doctors, is try to grab an essential core of ADHD. And of course, with the symptoms I showed you before in these detection lists, how to recognize this 10%. And then the 7th step, how to use their qualities. Because if you understand what the quality of ADHD is, or the quality of autism by all means, then you can manipulate a little and put them just give them another job or another project and use their qualities, because number one is, hey, you pay this guy, so use him and make a profit from it. And then of course hire a coach every now and then. That's what happens more and more. Reasonable adjustments. I prefer the word useful adjustments, but anyhow, that's a choice of words. And in the end, and it's happening now already, advertising for people with special brains. So yes, I will now proceed to the questions, but let me finish this. Number 10 is important. My personal aim is that employers start advertising, looking for account manager, sales manager, dyslexia or ADHD counts as recommendation. Now, wouldn't that be wonderful? And here and there, it's already happening. So let's end my talk with this hopeful aim for all of us. Thank you so far, and let's have some questions, Henry. Maybe you can close my presentation.
I will close in just a second. I seem to have lost my...
Oh, never mind.
oh, there it is.
Questions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, we've had a couple of questions in, and so very keen to ask you.
Yeah.
We've had someone enthusiastic, so they've actually emailed it in because for some reason wouldn't enter in the system. Do you ever see resistance from employees that don't see the coach as on their side because the employer appointed them? And she goes on to say, I would be wary of someone I hadn't chosen myself. Is this attitude common?
Yeah. In my experience, since 1998, it happened 2 or 3 times within whatever 1,500 cases or whatever, I don't know, didn't count them. It's an understandable question, but well, they come to me via the company doctor, and the company doctor is already a bit not the employer, but between employer and employee. So, and then the company doctor refers to me and gives a referential. So that helps, of course. I can understand the question, but it depends on the attitude of the coach, I think. Because as I told you, the triangle, I empathize with the employee as well as with the employer, and I do it openly and transparent and let them understand. So when I address the employer, I also include the employee and say, this is the way the employer thinks, and it helps you to understand the employer, and vice versa. So then they really feel that I'm independent.
Yeah, so you have that strong conversation on where the sort of lines of information are, so people can feel confident.
Yeah.
We had a question submitted, so and I think it is an interesting question. So the title is Self-Employment for Late Diagnosed ADHD in Mid-40s. I have latent diagnoses of dyspraxia, ADHD, ASD traits. Is self-employment the way forward? Disproportionately, people with ADHD are self-employed, maybe my niche. I got a degree, postgraduate qualification. Only place to get meaningful employment is declaring dyspraxia ADHD in a government organisation.
So the question is self-employment something for me?
Yeah, no, I think they're slightly inferring, is it sort of all they can do? Is it just a government job or self-employment?
Yeah. Self-employment is really a solution, not the solution, a solution for people with ADHD, because operating, that's why ADHD sometimes looks like autism. The interaction with the environment, with colleagues, is sometimes a bit challenging, so to say. So self-employment, then you really feel where the necessities are, where the priorities are. And I see a lot of people with ADHD and other traits who, in the end, choose to be self-employed, and it can help. But also as a self-employed person, be it only self-employed or even becoming an entrepreneur and hiring people, you always need people to support you. So a good bookkeeper, your partner, your private partner, as your kind of secretary support, like my wife always supports me. So it's not the solution, it can be a solution.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
In the meantime, there's 2 more questions.
Okay, another question.
Thank you. Sorry, we do have another question, so let me just bring that up. People have been very impressed by your approach.
Thank you.
They'd be keen to know, obviously it's focused on the workplace, like, do you see how it could be adapted to work in schools?
Work in schools in what ways? In schools there are also employees. I coach a lot of teachers and from all kinds of primary school, secondary school, etc. So is that?
I think they're wondering. I think they've been impressed by some of the guidance you've given, and they're asking. I think predominantly could it work for the kids, like this coaching.
Yeah, I have been working in Rotterdam clinic for family clinic and coaching adolescents, and I kind of did the same approach. I went to school with them, the mother, the girl or boy, and the teacher or the mentor, etc. And but it's a bit different than at work. There is not a contract, you know. You can't say, what I always promote is, hey, employer, you pay them, so profit from them. You can't say that with a student. So it's different, but a lot of the tools are very applicable, very applicable.
They're obviously wonderful and very interesting. You know, and I think it's wonderful to have introduced a lot of people to those tools. Which I think they're going to find, you know, which people will find a lot of value from. Oh, my poor video is gone again. It's very sad. So I have to go to this one so you can see me slightly less beautiful. I thought we'd got the other video back. I'm sad for it. Hans, you've been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. It's genuinely been really wonderful and insightful listening to you, and thank you so much.
Okay.
We have to say goodbye. It's always a rather quiet goodbye, but you've been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Very insightful, very interesting, and we hugely value you coming. Thank you for supporting this. Thank you for all your work you've done for people with ADHD that you do in the charities with ADHD-Europe and in the Netherlands, and your support here. It's a big deal. Thank you very much.
It's absolutely my pleasure, and hope to meet you again. And if there are any questions, just forward them to me. And if there's an email address, I will answer them.
That's very kind. We will. Well, yeah, you
okay,
heard
bye.
that. Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Success with the conference further.
Thank you. Bye, Hans. Bye. Wonderful. So I thought that was wonderfully insightful, very interesting, and incredible wealth of experience. And I think, particularly bringing in perspective of someone who's been doing it for a long time, who started when coaching, wasn't fashionable, looking at different things, and having had to build up his own techniques around coaching and ADHD. And you can see he's built up real structures and ideas which bring their own insight.